present, will share my Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll discuss about Marcos, martial law, and Cebu social movement. Allow me to put my headphones first. Good morning. Is it sorry, it's morning here, but it's in the afternoon. It's in the afternoon. Okay. When Ferdinand Marcos rose to national power, he reversed the usual pattern of cacique democracy that was founded on the American context of rule of law by using the state as instrument of political power. It was the constitutional suspension of the writ of habeas corpus and the imposition of martial law in 1972 that precipitated the proliferation of mass movements against the regime, and particularly in Cebu. During the Marcos years, attempts at political organizing were outlawed, and those who were active in progressive anti-dictatorship movements were either arrested or summarily executed by the authorities. Perhaps one reason for the proliferation of the communist rebels at the hinterlands of Cebu province. I'm from Carcal, Cebu, and at the time, in my hometown, the most popular reference for the NPAs were the term "way sapatos" or "walang sapatos." Among the first indications of what can be called reform politics in Cebu came in the later part of the 1960s, when advocacies introduced by a church movement called the Basic Christian Communities Community Organizing, BCCO, emerged in Cebu with the Visayas Secretariat for Social Action, or VISA. Among the first to engage in community organizing in Cebu at the height of martial law were church-based groups such as the Share and Care Apostolate for Poor Settlers of the Archdiocese, and similar non-government organizations like Alay Kapwa, the Task Force Detainees of the Philippines, of course, VISA, the United Church of Christ in the Philippines, UCCP Bradford, and the Visayas Ecumenical Movement for Justice and Peace, or VMJP. In the martial law years, NGOs expanded, so we must also take note in history that there were a lot of non-government organizations that proliferated all over Cebu and were housed in Cebu City. It started with the community development initiatives under the Philippine Ecumenical Council for Community Organizations, or PECO, that organized communities all over the country. And these movements often drew from the approaches of Marxist structuralism and the strategies made popular by Saul Alinsky and Paulo Freire. The enactment of the anti-squatting law, that's Presidential Decree 772, in 1975, paved the way to the formation of the Panaghugpong sa Kabus nga Taga-Dakbayan, or PANAG, we popularly call it PANAG. It's a confederation of urban poor dwellers all over Cebu City, and then later on expanded to Mandaue City and Lapu-Lapu City. In 1979, a series of massive community demolition took place in 5 major areas covered by the Slum Improvement and Rehabilitation Program, or the popularly called areas of SIRP, that was far-reaching from the north and south reclamation areas of Cebu City. Following political repression and persecution of progressive groups, many activists went underground during after these massive demolitions, or during these years. At first, instead of protesting against national issues and opposing repressive rule in general, PECO focused on local and very micro concerns, such as water, power, sanitation, pathways for these communities, paved roads, and their links to larger issues such as education, health, and housing. Only the basic social services. So that's how community organizing developed. It's simply what meets the eye, or the regularity of the everyday life, that is the basis for community organizing. But the major people's organizations later saw the value of establishing influence on existing programs and projects to redirect these to national issues, such as the campaign against martial law, massive inflation, and then state corruption. So the urban poor bailiwick building in 59 communities started after the massive demolition of the reclamation area. I am very much involved in these communities, being a student leader of the Student Catholic Action of the Philippines and the Secretary General at that time. The major urban poor confederations were made up of various communities. There are 80 communities or 80 barangays in Cebu City, but 59 of which have people's organizations. The 34 are the largest communities, which surrounds the the city square of Cebu. You have the big communities, which are really jam-packed with a lot of slum areas. And these are the major 34 communities that can actually deliver votes to make a mayor win. But these are also very poor communities. So the major urban poor confederations that will deliver like 30,000 votes, 20,000 votes were the Barrio Luz Confederation of Organizations, that's BLCO, the B. Rodriguez Urban Poor People's Organization, that's BRUPA, Suba Residents Association, SURA, the Cristohanong Katilingban sa Pasil, CRISCAPA, the Alaska Mambaling Confederation of Organizations. Alaska Mambaling also used to be known as the Killing Fields, because this is also the area which was being attacked by the Alsamasa, or the paramilitary groups that were organized in Cebu. And so many of our leaders, community organizations, were being killed in this area. And then the reclamation area where the stevedoring households are organized after the demolition of the reclamation, or the demolition of the port areas along the reclamation area, is the MacArthur Highway residence area. Mandawi City Urban Poor People's Association was the umbrella organization of Barangay San Roque, Subang Dako, Tipolo, Mantuyong urban poor organizations. These communities, these urban poor communities, are along the markets and the coastal areas of Mandawi City. And this is Macupa. It's also a very large area of urban poor families. And then Lapu-Lapu City also has a lot of urban poor communities with a growing Mactan export processing zone, which accommodate floating population of workers, like about 80,000 to 30,000 families and clusters of household. And then this is where the prayer, the name of the organization, prayer, developed. Okay. After the Aquino assassination in August of 1983, various organizations and alliances were formed, such as the Nagkayusang Sugbo Alang sa Demokrasya, o NASUD, the Coalition Against People's Persecution, CAPP, the Cebu Oust Marcos Movement for Nationalism and Democracy, Command, and the Professionals Forum, or PF. Okay. The CAPP became the precursor to Bayan Cebu in 1985. There were personalities there were personalities active in this time, such as the famous or the popular radio personality Indaynita de Luz, Attorney Antonio V. Cuenco, who became a congressman of the South District, Attorney Democrito Barcenas, who became vice governor. Later, after 1986, Clay Rama, Zach Campanel from the Professionals Forum, Professor Zenny Uy of the University of San Carlos, who became the chair of Bayan later, and who also chaired the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, Paul Rodriguez, Paul Doroteo, Reverend Father Rudy Romano, who was disappeared with student leader Levi Ibanez after the big Welgang Bayan in 1984, and lawyers like Attorney Gabriel Ingles, Vicente de la Serna, who became governor in 1990s, Attorney Al Surigao, who was murdered later after the big transport strike, Armand Alforque, and a lot of student leaders such as the Mayo sisters, Ahmed Quizon, Ronald Baciano, Noel Tabasa, Jose Eleazar Bersales, Ceresio Mapula, Alin Rosales, Edmund Lau. I was among them, and I've experienced 5 times to be incarcerated during that period just because of the protests. And we were active with the Coalition Against People's Persecution, which is a Cebuano multi-sectoral organization that served as the precursor of the Bagong Alyansang Makabayan Cebu chapter. There were also media personalities who became allied members of Bayan. The Coalition Against People's Persecution is composed of major sectors in Cebu. The labor movement under Amasugbu KMU were made up of large unions from Metafil, Mehitabel, Coca-Cola Butlers, Philippines, the Mactan Export Processing Zone, Cebu Christian School, Cebu Community Hospital, the WGNA, Shipping, Super Ferry, Stevedores, and others unionized, about 30 unionized companies, and with labor federations such as the National Federation of Labor, the Southern Philippines Federation of Labor, SPFL. And there were major, as I have mentioned, the major urban poor groups that started from Cebu City from 59 communities and then later on expanded to Mandaue City and Lapu-Lapu City. And the biggest vendor confederation also started in Cebu, the Cebu City United Vendors Association with Felicissimo Imokropinta. He was a very active vendor leader since the Marcos era, but he was murdered in the time of Duterte in 2017. Then the Professionals Forum was a mixed group of businessmen. A lot of them were people who work in the insurance companies and a lot of, sales agents and professionals joined the PF. And then the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, the students, the League of Filipino Students, Student Catholic Action of the Philippines. I was a secretary at the time. The College Editors Guild of the Philippines, the National Union of Students of the Philippines, which is made up of all student councils. But there was also the Cebu Student Leaders Forum of different organizations in some 14 universities and colleges, the USC or the University of San Carlos, UP, University of the Philippines, Cebu, STC, St. Teresa's College, Colegio Inmaculada Concepcion, University of Southern Philippines, University of San Jose Recoletos, Cebu Institute of Technology, Cebu Normal School, Cebu Central Colleges, St. Scholastica's College in Talisay City, the Chinese school, the CEC is, I forgot the name, but this is a Chinese school, and a lot of children of big Chinese businessmen were actually enrolled in this university, but we were able to reach out to them because of the Pastoral Council of the CEC, and so they joined the Student Catholic Action. Then we have CSAT. CSAT is Cebu School of Arts and Trade, and then we have SWU, or Southwestern University, and the driver sector was made up of the Nagkaiusang Drivers sa Sugbo, NADSU, with 17 routes organized all over Cebu City. And the farmers group was originally really with the Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas, and even in the major communities in the upland areas of Cebu City were already about 4,000 farming households involved with Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas, Cebu. And the church peoples, there were major congregations who were active in street action in Cebu City and formed part of the following: the panaghugpong sa mga seminaristas sa Sugbo or PAS, and the promotion of Church People's Response Cebu. And lawyers groups, the Free Legal Assistance Group, the Protestant Lawyers League of the Philippines, and other independent law offices such as that of Attorney Gabriel Ingles, Attorney Vicente de la Serna, and others. So 1984, Welgang Bayan saw the rising of the Cebuanos with the Coalition Against People's Persecution. A 4-day multi-sectoral strike took place. It was like 4 days from October 21 to October 25, 1984. First in Cebu City, and then it expanded to Mandaue City and Lapu-Lapu City. Eventually, it paralyzed commodity circulation all over the province of Cebu, with the airport and the seaports that could not operate, as it was an all-out transport strike that took place. No? The bannering public demand at the time is to roll back oil price hikes and the inflationary rates on commodities. Transport choke points were manned with barricades and sandbags that really paralyzed the whole province. There were converging points. I can remember this one because I was manning the Sicatuna Street junction of the University of San Carlos to that of Lorega, San Miguel, the abattoir community. And then we were picked up from that area. I was taking some of the soya. We were throwing Z-nails in the streets to stop the transportations from coming in and paralyze the area. And then there were converging points from various communities. At the north, especially communities from Mandaue City, converged at Mabolo, Cebu City, and from the south, those communities from Talisay converged usually at the Pahina Central in the Tabuan market. And then the whole body of marchers at a certain time in the afternoon from 2 o'clock in the afternoon down to 7 to 8 p.m., as the group will see whether we are going to disperse or not, we converge once more as one large assembly of people at the Gaisano Metro at Colon Street. And then later, and during this week, we actually burned tires around the Gaisano Metro. It was really like fun for the young people like me. And we were so engrossed with it that some would also criticize that it has become adventurous already. The year marked as a very crucial year, as it was also the time for the midterm elections, which introduced the parliamentary system under Marcos, the interim Batasang Pambansa. Crackdown took place after this political action, so ranks of protesters were apprehended, rounded up, and taken to jail with charges. I was among those who was taken to jail, and 26 others we were brought to jail. And then Father Rudy Romano disappeared with Levi Ibanez, and Attorney Alzuriga was gunned down at the backyard of his house. So that was what took place after that one. And Bayan Cebu was inaugurated in 1985, a year after this massive strike. Professor Zinaida Uy became the chair, and she was followed by Attorney Vic Balbuena, Noel Tabasa, the professionals, Zach Campaner, Paul Rodriguez. Cebu, as a vote-rich opposition country, really sustained itself, and the mark of the literature of the left has made an imprint in Cebu, I would say that, with the 53 towns and component cities in Cebu province, including the independent cities of Cebu City, Lapu-Lapu City, and Mandaue City, it had mustered a strength of 2.7 million registered voters lately in 2016. Of the 2.7 million, Cebu City has at least 630,000 registered voters that surpass Lapu-Lapu City with 188,815 votes, Mandaue City with 189,712 votes, Talisay City with 120,240 votes, and Toledo City with 103,658 votes. Based on the National Statistics Office census of 2010, the total population in Cebu City of Cebu Province consisted of 866,171 persons. Cebu City has 80 barangays divided between the North and the South District, comprising 306 puruks. So as a person who is doing sociology and who is doing basically particularly political sociology and studying elections and the mechanisms of electoral politics in Cebu, I have been into these 306 puruks, and I noticed that more than 40% of which are really urban poor infested communities. So there are 34 urban and coastal barangays with large voting populations. Acquiring majority votes in these barangays could very well deliver electoral victory to candidates who seek political control of the city. Cebu province, moreover, hosts the biggest voting population among all provinces in the country, thus making it an attractive region to the eyes of national politicians. The country's major political parties regularly court the favor of local political leaders in Cebu, to gain political dominance in this vote-rich territory. In particular, the votes cast in the densely populated urban and coastal barangays at the Cebu City Reclamation Area and the South Road properties combined could alone win the seat to any candidate for the mayoralty position in Cebu City. Cebu City government is made up of offices of the mayor, the vice mayor, and 16 city councilors. The 16 council seats are equally divided between the two districts, north and south of Cebu City. Thank you so much. And this ends my presentation.